Hey everyone, this is Tony Leonardi, certified financial planner from Newtown, Connecticut, and author of A Smarter Way to Retire 10 Steps Towards a Confident Financial Future. And welcome to our Q2 second quarter 2026 webinar, Live On versus Leave On Assets, how to structure your retirement savings for both you and for your heirs. In our first quarter 2026 webinar, we focused mainly on smart tax planning for your retirement, tax loss harvesting, Roth conversions, smart withdrawal sequencing, lots of different great tax planning ideas for your retirement. Today, we're going to take this to the next level and talk about how to maximize for your family, for both you and for your heirs. On our agenda today, we're going to talk about live on versus leave on assets. What do we mean by that? And the key distinctions, how we calculate your live on versus leave on buckets, why it matters from a tax perspective, a risk return perspective, and most importantly, from the impact on your legacy, what goes to your kids and your grandkids. We'll look at a couple of real life examples, and these are not astronomical examples. These are pretty average. $1.5 million nest egg in a $4 million portfolio, and what kind of impact we can have using this strategy. Once your assets are differentiated into the two buckets, leave on versus live on, what strategies should you contemplate for each bucket? And then ultimately, how do you calculate? How do you implement this? We have a complimentary smart retirement model offer available for you. So let's get going. So I believe that this is one of the most costly mistakes that retirees are making today. Most retirees treat all their income the same way. Same investment mix, same withdrawal strategy, same tax plan. You may have different accounts. You may have a couple of IRAs, a couple of Roth IRAs, maybe a brokerage account, but people tend to think of all that they've accumulated as their nest egg. And they tend to manage that nest egg in a similar fashion. They manage it for their retirements. I can say with a high degree of confidence that most of you out there today are doing this exact same thing. And I can say that with a high degree of confidence because I've been in this business for over 30 years. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of couples and families and seen their retirement plans and helped them build smart retirement plans. And never have I met anyone who came into my office or had a first meeting with me who said to me, Tony, I've already broken down my assets into live on and leave on buckets. It's never happened. Very few people even talk about this concept. It's not a sophisticated concept. We're not going to get into QPERTs and GRATs and Q-tip trust and charitable trust. We're not going to get into a lot of sophisticated legacy planning, estate planning ideas. We're just going to talk about common sense way to rethink about how you're managing your assets for retirement to benefit not only you, but your heirs. Again, this single mistake leads to unnecessary risk. And the biggest thing it leads to is missed opportunity. I think the opportunity cost is what is so large here when you don't separate your assets, what you need to live on versus what you need to leave on. And all the while, the IRS is quietly becoming a very large partner in your retirement, taking 2 bites at your retirement apple. Now, what do I mean by 2 bites of your retirement apple? Every time you take a withdrawal from your IRA throughout your entire life, the IRS is there to take a bite of your apple, to take that income tax. You may be paying 22, 24% on every dollar that comes out of your IRA for the rest of your life, whether you need that money or not. Once you pass away and you pass those retirement assets onto your kids, the IRS is there by your kids' side, ready to take that second bite. And that second bite tends to be a much larger bite. Your kids don't have the luxury of spreading those distributions out over their lifetime like you do. Your kids are forced to take from your retirement accounts the entire sum within a 10-year period. So they have to take out individually 1/10 each year, take it out all in the 10th year. Doesn't matter as long as they drain that account by the 10th year. I have a client I'm working with right now, mid 50s, in his peak earning years, in his peak a tax bracket years. His father-in-law just passed away. and left the husband and wife a $2 million IRA. They don't need the money. They don't want the money now. They're in their mid 50s. They're making good incomes. They're going to be forced to take out over $200,000 every year for the next 10 years, pushing them into a higher tax bracket, pushing them into the 35, maybe the 37% tax bracket on money that they don't need or want at this point. So the IRS thanks you for not planning for an efficient transfer of wealth and not thinking about live on versus leave on assets. So, what are live on versus leave on assets? Again, this is not a complicated concept. It's actually very much a common sense concept. And I think you'll understand that once you see. What are live on assets? Those are the assets that you need to live on. All the money you're going to spend throughout your retirement, your living expenses, travel, hobbies, healthcare, helping your family. Maybe you want to help your kids with a down payment on a new home or help them pay for college for the grandkids, or you're funding 529s. Everything you're spending today is what you need to live on. Those are your live on assets. Some of you, many of you, surprisingly, will have money because you've done a great job of saving that you'll never need to live on. Money that you'll never touch, money that ultimately will go to your kids and grandkids. Those are your leave on assets versus your live on. So, your leave on assets is the money that you intend, whether you intend or not, money that will get passed on to your children and grandchildren. A lot of people don't think about what's going to pass on to the kids and grandkids. They just say, well, whatever's left, they'll get and they'll handle it. It's more than I started with. They're going to be in great shape without planning for that legacy or for that inheritance, and without planning for tax efficient wealth transfer. Ideally, you'd want a tax efficient wealth transfer, unlike the example I just gave you, which was a very inefficient tax wealth transfer. So treating both buckets the same is one of the biggest and most expensive mistakes that retirees make. We want to correct that. So why separating live on versus leave on assets is so important? Well, from an investment strategy standpoint, the money that you need to live on today, the money that you need today, tomorrow, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, should be invested very conservatively. You don't want to risk losing that money, the money that you need to pay your bills today. But the money that you're never going to touch, the money that is 20-year, 25, maybe 35 or 40-year money, should that money be invested the same way your 5-year money is invested? No, you would never think about doing it that way, but that's what most people do when they treat their entire nest egg as one. From a tax planning standpoint, different buckets should use different tax tools. If you don't separate your assets into two buckets, how are you going to apply different tax strategies, Roth conversions, QCDs? We're going to talk about some smart legacy tax strategies in a minute, which I think you might find interesting. Sequence of returns risk. Anyone know what sequence of returns risk is? Well, basically, sequence of returns risk says that in the first 3 to 5 years of retirement, or if you're currently retired, in the next 3 to 5 years, those are the most critical years for your retirement. If you get a market correction, negative returns on your assets in that first 3 to 5 years, you could start a snowball effect that you'll never recover from. Most failed retirement plans have to do with early volatility or early market volatility that wasn't planned for. And that could create, like I said, a snowball effect that you can't recover from. We can measure how much volatility to expect out of your portfolio based on how you're currently invested. How much do you have in cash, stocks, bonds, large cap, small cap, domestic, international, growth, value? We can measure how much volatility to expect, and we can plan for that volatility. What we can't plan for is when will the volatility happen? If the volatility happens 20 years out, not a big deal. If the volatility happens tomorrow, that could crush your plan. Separating your assets into leave on and live on can help manage that sequence of returns risk. And finally, and I think the most important, most impactful reason to do separating of live on versus leave on is the impact it has on your legacy. Leave on assets should be managed as tax efficiently as possible for your heirs. Most often, what happens is, like the case I just mentioned, people end up leaving the least tax efficient assets to their kids and creating a big tax problem for their kids. Not great family planning, which leads me to a question: asset location. We talked about asset location in our first quarter webinar. Where should your leave on assets be located? Do you have a taxable account, a tax deferred account, and a tax free account? Do you have all three? Are you pretty much evenly balanced between the three? That would be ideal. If you are, where should your leave on assets be located? It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to minimize taxes during your own lifetime? Or are you trying to minimize taxes on your legacy, on what you leave to the kids? That would help answer that question. So, we understand now that this is a pretty basic concept. You have money that you need to live on, but many of you will have assets that you'll never touch. Those are your leave on assets. So, how do you calculate? How do you figure what goes into each bucket? How much do I have in live on versus how much do I have in leave on? If you're a current client of mine, you have your own financial retirement model. In the model, we calculate the leave on amount for you. It's under the retirement safety margin, and I'll show you that in a minute. If you're not a client and you want to do this calculation on your own, it's a 4-step calculation. The first step is you need to project your retirement spending, detailed cash flow analysis, including taxes, inflation, healthcare. How much do you need to cover all of your expenses in a lump sum in terms of a present value dollar amount? That's going to be a pretty big number, I would imagine. Then you can subtract from that any guaranteed income you have coming in: Social Security, pensions, rental income. Subtract that from step number one, and that will give you your live on bucket. How much money do you need in a lump sum to supplement your Social Security, pensions, rental income, any guaranteed income that you have coming in? That's your live on bucket. If you have $2 million in your nest egg and you calculate that you need $1 million to supplement Social Security and pensions, maybe throwing off $40,000 or $50,000 a year, that $1 million is your live on bucket. If you started with 2 million, well, you have an extra million that goes in your leave on bucket. The leftover, the surplus, is what goes in your leave on bucket. Again, if you're a client of mine, we've calculated that for you and we call it retirement safety margin. And here's where you find that: it's under your risk reward grid. And this is a sample client. We can see their current portfolio here. Before we made any changes, improvements for them, they came to us with an 81% probability of retirement success and a leave on bucket, a safety margin in current dollars of $976,000. So if they had a $2 million portfolio, they needed a little bit more than $1 million to live on throughout their lifetime to supplement their Social Security, pensions, and any other fixed income they had coming in. They have a surplus, a safety margin of $976,000 that they probably will never touch, that will end up going to their kids 20, 25, 30 years from now. Should that $976,000 be managed the same way their 5-year money is being managed? Should long-term money be managed the same way short-term money is managed? No, no one would ever do that, but that's exactly what we do when we don't separate leave on versus live on. Now, this is interesting. It's sort of a tangent here. I pick up on stuff like this all the time. Can you see in this probability of success column here, as this client, if they decide to get more aggressive with their investments, their probability of success actually goes down? Why do you think that is? Their safety margin goes up, but their probability of success goes down. Now, this doesn't happen this way with every client in every situation. It just happens to be in this particular situation, because as you add risk into your portfolio, you add in the possibility of more negative returns. So that sequence of returns risk, that first 3 to 5 years that we talked about earlier, becomes a bigger risk when you add in more volatility. That's why probability of success goes down, probability of success goes up as you remove volatility, as you become more conservative. Safety margin goes down as well. That's an interesting relationship to look at there. This is that same client looking at their Monte Carlo analysis. Monte Carlo looks at what is the probability you'll have a successful retirement based on how you're currently invested, how much money you have, what you're spending your money on, and the inherent volatility in your portfolio. Again, sequence of returns risk, all of these negative, these red results where this couple runs out of money before they run out of retirement time, these are all negative returns, early bad returns in the market, that sequence of returns risk, that snowball effect that they can't recover from. If you have good years early on and bad years later on, not going to affect you. You may lose a lot of money, but you're still going to pass a lot of money on to your kids and you're going to have a successful retirement. That same couple, if they have a couple of bad years early on, they didn't plan for sequence of returns risk, they didn't mitigate that sequence of returns risk, they can run out of money before they run out of retirement time. So the difference between passing $15 million to your kids or running out of money is when the volatility happens and it wasn't planned for. That's why sequence of returns risk is the most critical thing to plan for, especially early on in retirement. Okay, this is probability of success. If you find that your probability of success is in this blue area, this is 90 to 99% probability of success. That is amazing. I can guarantee you, you are going to have a large portion of your nest egg fall in the leave on bucket because you have saved so much. You probably have Social Security, maybe even a pension. You only need a small portion of your savings to live on. A large portion of your savings will end up in that leave on bucket. If you're in the green area, the 70 to 90% range, which is ideal for retirement, you will again have a leave on bucket. It may be closer to half of your retirement savings, but that's still a significant distinction to make that people aren't making. If your probability of success is 50%, you have some work to do. You probably don't have any leave on assets. I would imagine at 50%, all the money you've saved, you need that to live on. So you probably don't have any leave on assets if your probability of success is 50%. So your Monte Carlo will give you an indication of how much leave on money you might have. So let's just summarize here. Why is separating live on versus leave on assets so important? When you separate the two, it allows you to invest each bucket more appropriately. Again, you want to be conservative early on, but for your 25, 30, 35, 40-year money that's going to go to your kids and grandkids, you should be a little bit more aggressive with that. You have time, definitely have time on your side to get more growth, to impact your legacy. If you have your money in these two different buckets, you can apply different tax strategies to each bucket. You can better protect against that sequence of returns risk that we've been talking about. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And you will significantly improve the after tax legacy that you leave behind. Again, treating all retirement dollars the same, which is what most of us are doing, is very common. Everyone does it, and it's very costly, especially in terms of opportunity cost. So let's look at a few real life examples and let's see if we can quantify this. Here we have a couple, both age 68, came to me with $1.5 million portfolio. Before we separated their assets into the two buckets, they had a 71% probability of retirement success, including they wanted to leave some money to their kids. We were able to calculate for them that of their $1.5 million nest egg, about 950 is what they actually needed to live on to supplement Social Security and pensions. And about 550 they probably will never touch. $550,000 plus the growth on that will probably ultimately go to their kids and grandkids. So after separating their $1.5 million portfolio into these two buckets and applying the appropriate strategies to each bucket, we were able to improve their probability of success from 71% to 92%. And here's the kicker. We were able to add an additional legacy for their kids, their heirs, their kids and grandkids of $420,000 after taxes. That is amazing for $1.5 million portfolio. When was the last time someone came to you and offered you a $420,000 improvement in your financial situation just by thinking differently about how you're handling your money? Pretty impressive, I would say. Now, the impact of this grows as your portfolio grows. Here's a client that came in both age 70 with a $4 million nest egg. Before separating their assets, their probability of success was 76%. We were able to calculate for them that they would need about $1.4 million to live on to supplement Social Security. They didn't have a pension in this case, but they had $2.6 million that they probably would never touch. Money that will ultimately probably go to their kids. After separating into two buckets, applying the appropriate strategies, we were able to improve their probability of success from 76% to 95%. And get this, we added almost $1 million in after tax legacy for their kids and grandkids. That is amazing. The key takeaway here is that the larger the portfolio, the more powerful this distinction becomes. And I've seen people with portfolios like this who don't make that distinction leave a lot of money sitting on the table. So you're thinking, okay, this is common sense. It kind of makes sense to me. I understand where this is going. I don't know yet how much I have in live on versus leave on, but I can figure that out, or I can help you figure that out together. But what are these strategies that you're talking about that you can use for the different buckets? So let's look at your live on bucket, money that you'll spend during your retirement. This should be, like I mentioned before, a more conservative investment mix, especially early on. We want to focus on protecting against sequence of returns risk. It's that critical. How do we protect against sequence of returns risk? Well, maybe we need another bucket. Under the live on assets bucket or live on assets umbrella, maybe we need two buckets in this section. One bucket for our 3 to 5 year money, because that's where sequence of returns can really hit us hard. And another bucket for our 5 to end of retirement bucket. So two buckets. If you say to me, Tony, I think I need about $50,000 a year to supplement my Social Security and pension, and I'm going to need that for the next 5 years. Well, I would say let's make a 5 year bucket because we're being conservative. We want to protect against sequence of returns risk. Let's put $250,000 in your 5 year bucket. That way, no matter what happens in the market over the next 5 years, you're going to get that $50,000 and we're not pulling it from assets that have decreased in value. We're pulling it from a safe bucket that we set aside just for the specific purpose of protecting against sequence of returns risk. The second bucket would be your year 6 bucket and on. That could be a more traditional stock and bond mix. If the market crashes next year, you're protected, and that second bucket has 4 years to recover. That's how you protect against sequence of returns risk. Now we're talking about 3 buckets: your early bucket, your sequence of returns risk bucket, your live on bucket, and then your leave on bucket. But also in your live on bucket, what other strategies do we have? Well, tax efficient withdrawal sequencing. We talked about this in our Q1 webinar. Where are you pulling your money from? Are you pulling it from your taxable accounts first, your tax-free accounts first, or your tax-deferred accounts first? Where you pull your money from will determine if you're being as tax efficient as you possibly can be. That's something I can help you with. Should you look at strategic Roth conversions for your live on assets? They don't work for everyone. They work best for people who are between retirement age and age 73 when RMDs start. That 8 or so year period where your taxable income is low, perfect window for Roth conversions. If we notice that down the road you're going to be in a higher tax bracket because of the RMDs being forced out down the road, that could be a great solution for you. It doesn't work for everyone, but if it works for you, something to consider for your live on assets. I have a lot of clients who are age 73. They start getting their RMDs. They don't need them. They don't want them. They have plenty of other assets. They have plenty of money coming in. All those RMDs are doing is making Uncle Sam happy. They're taking the RMDs, they're paying the tax, and it's pushing them into higher Medicare IRMA surcharge brackets, an additional tax. They're getting double hit on money that they don't need. If you have any charitable inclination at all, QCDs could be a very powerful strategy here. And that's something that I can help you with as well. We have a strategy where we can keep your kids whole for your entire IRA balance, even though you're taking RMDs and sending some or all of that off to a charity to reduce the taxes. Interesting idea. So, the thought here on your live on assets is spend the least tax efficient assets first, leave the more tax efficient assets for your kids if that's your goal, and be tax smart. For your leave on assets for your second bucket, this is the bucket that's going to go to your kids and your grandkids. If your goal is to maximize after tax value to the next generation, you should be more growth oriented in your leave on bucket. Again, you shouldn't be managing 20, 25, 30-year money the same way you're managing 5-year money. It doesn't make any sense. You should start looking at some of what I term smart legacy tax shield strategies. These are strategies that I've come up with based on my understanding of the tax code and where the opportunities are to improve the tax result for your kids and your grandkids. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So the emphasis is on tax efficient legacy tools, keeping the most tax efficient assets for your kids. So the two key principles here that we're talking about, very simple, again, common sense. Distinguish your live on assets versus your leave on assets. Quantify those numbers, separate into two buckets, then make sure you're applying the correct strategy to the correct bucket. Will have a major impact on your retirement plan. Now, to help you determine what the proper strategies might be for each bucket, I have a couple of guides that are available to you. Many of you already have this Roth IRA conversion playbook. If you don't have it yet, it is available for you in terms of an electronic download. This is a practical guide to help you decide if, again, if it's not for everyone, Roth conversions aren't for everyone, should I be doing it or not? So if I should be doing it, when should I do it? And how much should I be converting each year to not get myself into tax trouble? How do I do this efficiently? So this guide will talk you through strategies to potentially reduce lifetime taxes, how to create more tax-free income and flexibility in retirement, real client examples, a step-by-step process to implement conversions intelligently. And this is available for download, or it will be available for download on my website soon. I have my web developer adding this to my website, and if it's not there right now, it should be there any day now. And my website is leonardifamilywealthcare.com. If you don't have this playbook yet and you'd like a copy of it, just shoot me an email and I will email a copy to you. Now, you can get Roth conversion information pretty much anywhere these days. It's all over the internet, including my conversion playbook. What you can't get pretty much anywhere else is my Smart Tax Shield Legacy Playbook. These are strategies that I've developed over the years based on what your goals are. If your goals in retirement are to minimize taxes during your lifetime, then I would implement some of my smart retirement tax shield strategies to minimize taxes during your lifetime. They include Roth conversions and QCDs, like we talked about earlier. If your goal is to reduce taxes for your heirs to make things more tax efficient for them, I have different strategies that I call smart legacy tax shield strategies. I'm not going to get into the details of how they work today because they're customized for each individual situation. But suffice it to say that 2 bites at the apple that the IRS is taking now with no planning done on your part, you can choose to reduce the first bite during your lifetime or the second bite during your kid's lifetime. Very difficult to reduce both. But once you decide which one is more important for you to reduce, I can help you identify and implement the right strategies for what you're trying to accomplish. So, in my Smart Tax Shield Legacy Playbook, we talk about the different strategies. We talk about live on versus leave on asset structuring. We have some examples like we looked at earlier. And again, this should also be available for download on my website. If it's not there today, it will be there soon, I promise. Finally, over the years, I mentioned this, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of different clients, couples, families, and every situation is unique. You're unique. Your family is unique. Your family situation is unique. What you're trying to accomplish is unique to you. Everyone should have a customized solution. There is no one size fits all for everyone when it comes to retirement planning. With that said, I have recognized over the years that even though you're unique, there are other people out there like you in similar situations with similar concerns and similar goals. I was able to, over the years, develop 18 different unique retiree profiles based on really four key questions. Are you primarily in a live on asset situation or do you have significant leave on assets? How you answer that question in my retirement quiz will set you in one of two different paths. Is your primary tax focus reducing taxes for yourself during your retirement, or is it reducing taxes for your kids on what you leave for them, or is it a blend somewhere in between? How you answer that question takes you down a couple of different paths. Do you have any charitable inclination at all? Are you highly charitably inclined? Are you giving to charity currently? That will set you on a different path. Do you have no charitable inclination? You don't want to give anything to charity. That would be obviously a different path. Or you're willing to look at some options, would be a third path. And how concerned are you about running out of money? How you answer those four questions will lead you to one of my 18 unique retiree profiles. When you finish the quiz, it only takes a minute or two. You'll get your specific profile, a clear explanation of what it means for you, and strategy recommendations, not specifically for you, because I don't know anything about your situation yet, but for people like you who fell into that same type of profile. What types of strategies worked for them over the years? And maybe there's strategies that you may want to think about, may want to learn more about, may want to implement. Also, which of my two guidebooks, the Roth guidebook or the Smart Legacy Tax Shield book, would be more appropriate for you? This quiz is currently available on my website, leonardifamilywealthcare.com/quiz. On my website, it's under my favorite links. You'll find it there. I would encourage you all to go and take the quiz and see what profile you fall into and what strategies might be good for you. If you're looking for any additional resources from me, I have a lot to offer. I do put out a podcast episode usually every Friday morning. This week's podcast episode will be this webinar. I also put a video of the webinar or the podcast on my YouTube channel. If you're a YouTube user, you can find, I have, I think, 300 or so videos on YouTube on pretty much every conceivable topic out there, including sequence of returns risk, live on versus leave on, smart tax legacy strategies, etc. Also, obviously, I have Facebook, LinkedIn, and so forth. So the resources are there, they're available to you. I would encourage you to listen to my podcast, subscribe to my podcast. And you've heard this before. If you leave a review, it helps other people find us. So if you think I'm worthy of a good review, that would be very helpful for me as well. So to summarize, you're thinking about this makes sense. I'm not sure if I have a significant amount of leave on assets or not. How do I calculate that? What strategies might make sense for me? I do offer a complimentary smart retirement model session at no cost or obligation to you. We'll take 15 minutes or so, sometimes to go as long as 30 minutes. I'll show you how to calculate your leave on versus live on breakdown, give you some recommendations on things that you might want to consider, and clear next steps on how we might want to move forward. If you'd like that no cost, no obligation session just to get started, get some ideas, try on some new ideas, you can schedule that with me. My calendar is on my website as well, leonardifamilywealthcare.com. Look for my contact me and my Calendly links. So that's live on versus leave on. It's not difficult, not sophisticated, pretty much common sense, pretty much straightforward. But if and when you implement this, I promise you'll have a major impact not only your retirement, but on your kids and your grandkids as well. And remember, there really is a smarter way to retire. I appreciate you joining me, and hopefully I'll see you sometime soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Mosaic Wealth, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Mosaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Mosaic Wealth. The opinions expressed herein are for general information only and is not necessarily the opinions of Mosaic Wealth or its representatives. Investing is subject to risk, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure profit nor protect against loss. It is not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Please consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation.